Hey guys, welcome to March Collabness / April Foolishness. My friend Sammy from KissMyCreative approached me to do a collab. Basically something that I've never seen done before. She took 6 other artists here on YouTube and wanted to interview them and ask them 5 questions, give them 5 prompts, and then we get to ask her 5 questions and give her 5 prompts, and then we create projects. So what you're about to watch is me doing my project, and you're going to hear the audio of our phone call over it, and then when it's done, I'll come back and explain how my prompts worked into the page that I made. So thank you, Sammy, for having me, and be sure to check out her video. It will be linked down below in the description box. And if you haven't seen the other interviews, because I think I'm the last, if not one of the last artists, so there's been quite a few other interviews going on. Some really cool stuff. You get to learn a little bit more about your favorite artists. So yeah, let's get into it.
Hey Jen, how you doing?
Hey girl, hey. I'm good. How are you?
Oh my, I'm so good and I'm so excited that you've joined me. Jen, I just have to say before we even start that you are one of the first people that I ever started watching years ago when I started mixed media, and I'm just so excited that I get to actually talk to you. So thank you so much for joining us in March Collabness, or actually April Foolishness.
I love that.
Right? So welcome to April Foolishness, Jen.
Hey, that's fitting for me. It works.
How are you doing?
Good, good. I have to say
Awesome.
also that you are one of my favorite YouTubers to watch. And yeah, as much as you like my videos, I love your videos just as much.
Oh my gosh, that warms my heart to hear that. Thank you so much. Okay, let's get into these questions and prompts. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay. Okay. So question number one is I've seen your videos, and I think you had one earlier this month where you were showing all of your vintage papers, and you were putting sets on Etsy with just the most awesome and amazing vintage sheets. And you make a lot of junk journals with really cool different types of papers and pages inside. Where do you get such amazing stuff? And how do you have the guts to use it? Because I have a few pieces of vintage paper that I just cannot bring myself to use. And you have so much of it. So, like, yeah, I want to know where you get that stuff and how do you bring yourself to use it?
Well, I'm like that too. There's a few special pieces that I just can't bring myself to use. But so I live in Pennsylvania and like outside Philadelphia, and for some reason we have really fantastic flea markets and antique shops, and there's just so much old good stuff around here. So that's where I get my stuff at flea markets, estate sales, stuff like that. And when I get something that I'm not sure about, I always do research about it so that I
Right.
know I'm not using something that's like super like maybe valuable or something. Like if it's a ledger, I try to research like the family or whatever. So I try to make sure that I'm not like ripping up a $1,000 ledger or something like that.
Exactly. Could you imagine ripping up a piece of paper and throwing a bunch of paint on it and then
Oh,
finding out it's worth like $1 million? That's what
and
scares me too.
people get upset too. I've noticed sometimes I get some comments about, like I'm ruining history and stuff like that. And, I don't want to yuck anyone else's yum, but to each his own.
Yuck anyone else's yum. I love that. It's so funny, like and this is kind of random, I'm going off here, but it's so funny talking to you guys, because especially because you guys are from different areas and different states and different parts of the world. I'm hearing these funny little sayings. Like, I think Dee Dee said, I need to get my poop in a group. It's just, that's so hilarious. Okay, back to the vintage stuff.
Okay.
But Yeah, I get what you mean where I could see people getting upset. I remember there was a book I made my first junk journal in, and that video got some real hate because it was a book that a lot of people have and kind of cherish. And they
Really?
didn't like, yeah, they didn't like the fact that I took the cover off and painted over it and had people cursing me out in those comments. That's actually my most viewed video ever on YouTube.
Wow.
So it was very interesting how people hold, these old books and vintage papers and stuff so dear to their heart. So I could see how you might get some comments in your videos.
Yeah.
But okay, so that brings us to our first prompt.
Okay.
And it's a pretty simple one for you. I just want you to use some vintage papers, but I want you to use vintage papers that have colors on them. Because I know a lot of vintage is just like, coffee dye look or like a tan or brown or those kind of neutral colors. But I'm sure
Uh-huh.
in your stash, you've got some vintage papers that have some color. So I want you to use vintage with color on it.
Okay, that's super interesting. Good prompt.
Yes, I don't see a lot of that, but I'm sure with your stash, you've got something
I
in there.
I do. I have a few. Yep.
Awesome. Okay, so question number two. Um, okay, this is kind of going back, but you got me interested and you taught me what ICAD was because I feel like 4 years ago when I started, your videos were like one of the first that I saw, and I think that's what you were doing. You were doing ICAD videos. And I was so interested in the fact that you're doing art on these little tiny pieces of paper. And I noticed that through the years, you've kept with ICAD and you've been so consistent. So, my question is it safe to say pretty much that you prefer to work on smaller surfaces? And what's the biggest piece you've ever created?
Yes, it is safe to say that I prefer to work on smaller pieces. Um, I really feel more comfortable with smaller pieces, and I don't know if it's because it's like less real estate to work on. I don't know what it is, but I just gravitate towards smaller pieces, and that's why I do like the index card so much. Um, the biggest piece I think I've ever worked on, maybe like 12 by 16 a canvas.
Mm,
So
yeah,
not very big at all.
but huge compared to what you normally work on.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it
Because
was
I
kind of
noticed that Yeah, I noticed that aside from the iCads, you like most of your journals that you make are like cute little mini journals. And I've always loved the fact that you're able to do so much on these small surfaces. And you and Dee Dee totally inspired me to, whenever I'm out of mojo, to just pull out a smaller surface. And you're right, it totally helps. It releases the fear, and I think it is because of the lack of real estate. Like it's such a small area, it's not so intimidating. And I'm like you, where the largest thing I ever made was actually very recently, and it was I think 16 by 20 canvas that I had sitting in my house for years and finally painted it, but it was easy because I just copied one of my old art journal pages and just made it bigger.
yeah.
But yeah, I totally get the whole small surface thing. I agree with that. I totally agree with that. So, okay, then here's your second prompt. I want you to create this page in one of your larger journals that you don't use
Ah!
work in.
Okay. You know, I have that humongous Dina Wakley journal, like the really, really big one.
Mm-hmm. Is
And
it
for
the
some
is it
reason,
the 9 by 12 or the bigger one?
the bigger one.
Ah, I have the 9 by 12, the hardcover one that I hardly ever work in.
Yeah, I don't really work in mine either. And that really big one, for some reason, I'm just terrified. So I think I'm gonna have to bust that one out.
If that's your only large journal, then bust it out. If you do have something a little less intimidating, you could use it, just not like a mini page or a mini journal, something
Okay.
bigger.
Okay.
Throw a little challenge in there for you. Okay, so question number three. I noticed that, And this is something that's always drawn me to your art is that you use a lot of really cool and different tools and mediums and pieces in your mixed media. You always mix it up and use so many different products and stuff. So you've been one of those artists for sure that showed me all the different like fun options that we have in this whole mixed media world. So my question is, what's your very favorite thing to use? And is there also a thing that you're afraid to use? And by thing, I mean like it could be a medium, it could be a substrate, it could be a tool, anything in mixed media that you use. What's your favorite? And then what's something that you don't use because you kind of shy away from it, and why?
Um, okay, so I'm gonna have to say for the thing that I'm afraid of or don't use that often is watercolors. I love watercolors. I love the way they look, but I don't know, it's just one of those things that I don't use as often as I'd like, and for some reason I'm just kind of intimidated by it. And my favorite, God, that's a tough one. I mean, they're all my favorites, right? They're like your kids. You can't pick a favorite.
Right. You got to pick one favorite, something that you can think of that you always gravitate towards.
Um, you know what? I'm gonna say I'm gonna say acrylic paint, like straight acrylic. Can I say that? Like
Yeah.
a blanket acrylic paint?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah,
medium.
that's something I always use. Yep.
I can see that because you do always use acrylic paint and you have so many awesome colors. So I'm a little jealous there. I don't use my acrylics as much as I should. I'm kind of the opposite to you, where I feel like I use more watercolors than acrylics. So it's interesting that you're not so up to using watercolors. That's very interesting because I noticed that you watered down your acrylics, although it's a different kind of effect with the watered down acrylics and watercolors, but
Yeah,
watercolors are
I don't know why, like I do. I was just thinking that as you were saying it that I watered down my acrylic. So I don't know what the difference in my mind is, but it's just one of
yeah.
those.
Well, for your third prompt, I am going to it's kind of a two-parter prompt. So I want you, because I don't want to make it too hard on you.
I appreciate that.
So I do want you to incorporate watercolor,
Okay.
but I also want you to incorporate acrylics because it's your favorite thing.
Oh, I was so afraid you were going to say don't use acrylics. I'm like, oh, what am I doing by saying this? Okay, good.
No, no, because that I know that would be a hard one. But no, I'm
Oh,
gonna. Although I feel like it's a little bit of a challenge to use both acrylics and watercolors, so that's your bit of a challenge for your third prompt there. You have to use both.
okay.
Okay. All right. So we are on to number 4. And this one, I want to kind of go over to the Etsy side of things and move away from the main art talk for a second. So you have an Etsy shop. I think your Etsy shop is great. I love all your vintage papers and everything in there. And so my question is, what made you start an Etsy shop? And do you have any general tips for people that do want to start one?
Okay, so the reason I started my Etsy shop was because as I was sharing my papers or using them in my projects, people were saying, like, where was I finding this stuff? They're not able to find it where they are in their part of the world or country or whatever. And I
Yeah,
really just wanted to share my stuff with my subscribers.
right.
And I'm not organized enough to like um, do it on my own. So I needed to have a place for everything to be organized and my orders to come in, so I knew where everything was going. So Etsy was more like a place where I could organize everything and have pictures of the stuff up, So that's why I started my Etsy shop. And what was the second part?
Do you have any do you have any tips for people who want to start one?
Oh, okay. Um, my tips would be a lot of pictures because one of my big pet peeves when I'm shopping online is that you want to see the product like all around different like how big it is and all the different sides of it and inside and everything, and it irritates me when you're left wondering like what's inside or something like that. So my tip would be to use a lot of photos and have like a really good description of it. Like
Yeah.
if you think it's described well enough, describe it some more.
Right, right. Yeah, that's a good tip actually. And you're right about the images because whenever I go on Etsy and I'm looking at stuff, I always hate when I there's only like one singular image. And it's funny that I even say that because in my own Etsy, I feel like that's what I do, which is bad and weird because on Instagram, if I post like a piece of my art, I always post a few photos of different angles. Yet for some reason, thinking back now on my Etsy, it's usually just one angle. Maybe that's why I don't
Right.
get any sales.
Well, I also have to say that I'm guilty of it too. Like I have a few things up that don't have probably enough photos, but you know.
Yeah. Well, you do like vintage paper packs and stuff, so it'd be hard to take like a photo of every single sheet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a really good tip, actually. I think that photos and descriptions are super, super important. And I'm going to take note of that and add some more photos to my Etsy.
Okay, cool.
So thank you for that.
Sure.
And so, okay, this brings us to prompt number 4, and this is a fun one. I want you to sell this piece on Etsy.
Okay. All right. I love that.
Just just because I noticed that there are certain times when you sell like your actual art on Etsy as opposed to just your vintage stuff. So sell it on Etsy.
Okay. Yeah, I've been trying to do that more just
Mm.
because like people often ask me, is this for sale? Or and also one of the big reasons is that I just have so much of my art everywhere. I need to like get some more
Yeah,
space going.
I hear you. It's so funny you say that because yesterday I was moving some stuff around because I was setting up my Cricut and I realized that I have this pile of art that's just loose and not in any journals or books, and I have nowhere to put it. Like my walls in my art space are kind of full. So now
Yeah.
I'm like, where do I put this stuff? I don't know what to do. So yeah, I guess selling it is a good idea. So yeah, I want you to sell this piece and some lucky person watching your video right now is going to get a March Collabness slash April Foolness piece for their home.
I love it. I love it.
Okay. So we're at our final question. And so this question has to do with YouTube. Now, this will probably be the longest video you've ever posted on your channel
Mhm.
because I know that you usually post pretty short videos and you seem to just bang them out like it's nothing. Like your channel is so super successful and you've remained consistent, at least in my opinion, pretty consistent for years. So what's coming from someone who is very inconsistent and struggles with that like crazy, what's your secret for like keeping that momentum going and being able to put out so many videos and keep that mojo going to begin with?
So my secret really is that I try to do something arty every day. Like no matter it could be 5 minutes or 3 hours. I try to always make sure I do something because honestly, that's what keeps me sane.
Yeah.
Um, and my secret, I would say, is that I always have my camera up, like my camcorder, and I don't really ever make anything without recording it. Now, that's not to say they all make it like to YouTube because some of it is just straight crap, but
Yeah.
that's I just record everything. That's my secret.
That's actually a good idea because, like you said, even if it ends up being something you don't want to share, you just don't have to share it. And if it
Yep.
ends up being something you want to share, everything's already done. That's
And
a
part
good
of it
idea.
And part of it is selfish too, because I have like a really, really bad memory. So if I make a page and then I look back on it, I'm like, this is really cool, but how did I do this? So I have the video then so I could see exactly how I made it and what steps I took. So it's selfish
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, I agree with that too, because I'm somebody that actually goes back and watches a lot of my videos. I don't know if
Me
that's
too.
weird. It's okay. So I don't feel so weird then, because I've always been like, and I do it a lot. It probably because I lose my mojo a lot, but I've always been like, is this normal for me to just like watch a bunch of my own videos?
Right. I
Yeah,
often
so
wondered that too, if other people go back and watch their videos, but I never wanted to ask anyone because I was afraid I'd seem like super narcissistic. Like, what is she doing watching her own videos?
right.
But
I feel the same way.
I'm so glad I'm not alone.
You're not alone. And you know what? I'm sure there's a lot of us that do it and just don't want to say it.
Right.
Okay, so that's good. It's good to do daily art. That's something I still struggle with, but I'm gonna try to get there. At least if not daily, at least consistent. Because I know that they say, is it like 20 some, I think they say if you do something for 21 days or something, it becomes a habit. So I could
Yep.
see, yeah, so I could see how someone that does tries to do something artsy every day would get into that habit, and it might get to the point where a day passes and you can't not do art, which
And
is great.
yeah, and I really make it like I'll set my alarm for like a half an hour earlier than I need to get up so I make time, you know.
Yeah, right. And it's funny that you say you always have your camera going. I actually never do art unless I'm making a video, which is kind of ridiculous when you think about it. So I've got to do a lot more art for myself and possibly just put the camera on just in case. I'd probably get a lot more videos up that way.
Yeah, that makes me sad. Like I feel like you're not doing enough art because you're
I'm
amazing. You need to do it all the time.
Aw, thank you. I'm not. I literally, like, whatever you guys see on YouTube is what I do. Like, I don't usually do art off camera ever, which is sad. I sometimes sketch or doodle off camera, but as far as like actual art, I never do it without recording. And because I hardly ever record videos, I'm hardly ever doing art, but that will change.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was a great answer. Thank you for that. That's given, I'm sure, a lot of people some encouragement and inspiration to try to do some art every day. And so that brings us to our last prompt, which is a very simple prompt. I've kind of been doing this with everyone. I have 5 different things in front of me. So just choose a number 1 through 5, and that'll be your fifth prompt.
3.
3. Okay. Oh, three
Oh
was
no.
the one. Three was the one bad one in the 5. So
Oh no.
3 is you have to use your very least favorite color. So the color that you hate, use that. And what color is that, by the way?
Um,
And don't lie
man.
and say it. Don't lie and say it's teal because we know it isn't.
I love all colors, but I think, oh man, I'm gonna have to say orange. Orange.
Okay. So you've got to use orange in there
Okay.
and
You
make
know
it
what's funny about
noticeable.
that? When I was coming up with your prompts, that was one of them, but I was like, that's mean. I'm getting rid of that one.
There's been some challenges throughout these past videos where a few of us have thrown a curveball at the other, so it's okay. None of it's mean. It's fun challenge. It's a fun way to think outside the box. I've been super challenged so far, so you could throw whatever you want at me.
And it's like oftentimes when something's like super challenging, that's when you make something that's super awesome. Like it's
Yeah.
unexpected, but it's like amazing.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that with the 4 I've done so far, it's been so fun. It's taken me outside of my comfort zone, and I feel like I'm really liking what's coming out of it. And what everyone else is doing is just amazing. So I can't wait to see what you do with your 5 prompts. I'm sure it's going to be amazing. Everyone watching your channel now can see it on the screen. It's lovely. It's beautiful. That orange looks great. So yeah, that's pretty much it, Jen. I just again want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy art life to join in on this March Collabness slash April Foolishness. I really appreciate it. I'm so glad that after all these years of watching you, I was able to have a little chat with you. So thank you so much. And is there anything that you want to say in the end here to your peoples?
Thank you for watching, and thank you, Sammy, for I mean, this is amazing. When you first emailed me, I thought, what an amazing idea. Like, I've never seen it done before, and it's just, I think you should make this like a yearly thing.
I'm gonna try to do that actually. I think it was so fun and everyone loves it. So yeah, maybe, possibly 2020 might be another one. Thank you again, Jen. Thank you so much. And yeah, I guess that's it. Bye, Jen.
Bye. Okay, so this is my finished piece, and my first prompt was use vintage papers with colors on it. I started out with a piece of German music paper that doesn't have colors on it, but then for my main focal image, I have this bird here, which obviously has color on it. It's from like a vintage bird. It's not a book, but it came in like a book, but it's like loose sheets of birds. I don't know when it's from, but it's old. I got it in an antique shop. So, yeah, I used the bird, but then I also used this like coupon here, and it has this like bluish kind of color to it. So that's 2 elements. And then number 2 is create on a large journal, or create a large piece, like not a mini journal. And I know I said I was going to bust out my huge Dina Wakley journal, but I just couldn't. So I did bust out my 8x10 Dina Wakley one, and I do struggle with this one too because I do like small pieces, so this was a little bit of a challenge. So, okay, number 3 was use watercolors and acrylics, because watercolors I said I had a hard time with, and acrylics I said were my favorite. And so as I was doing this, I didn't have my prompts next to me. I was just trying to remember them, and I completely forgot I was supposed to use watercolors. So that's why I did the acrylic, and then I added the watercolor gesso or watercolor ground, and then added watercolors on top. If I did this again or had to do it over, I would put the watercolors first and then do the acrylic. I just did it the way you saw because I forgot. So those are the watercolors incorporated. Number 4, sell this piece on Etsy, on my Etsy shop. There's a link to my Etsy shop down below. I'm going to slice this off because it is in my journal, and now it will have this back piece to it. And hey, maybe you like that piece better than this piece, but it will be for sale on my Etsy. Yep. And number 5 is use your least favorite color, which I said was orange. And then I realized I used cheddar a lot, which is orange, but I meant like primary orange, like the Dina Wakley tangerine. So I did use the cheddar in the background, but I didn't feel like that counted because I do use that color a lot. But then as a finishing touch, I added splatters of this bright orange, which dried back quite a bit. Less intense than it was to begin with. But yeah, so that's the orange. And that's it for my page. If you have any questions, because I wasn't explaining what I was doing, if you have any questions about anything that I did on this page, you can leave a comment down below and I will answer you right away. And thank you so much for watching. Be sure to check out Sammy's video. And thank you, Sammy, for having me. And bye, guys.